in that?
Full permission to mess it up. Like, exploration is a big part of sexuality that we don't encourage. We think we have to get it right every time. We think we have to get it perfect every time. And because of things like porn, a lot of times sex feels like a performance. Like, like we just have to look and do these certain things or these certain acts so it looks a certain way. So giving people the permission for it to be an exploration. Like, yeah, you're gonna mess up. Like, you're gonna do things outside of your value system, maybe, and that defines your value system better. You're gonna do things that that you don't know of that are outside of sex education. The one thing that I think that you can't actually change yourself is your intuition. I think that's like
I was going to ask you about that. That how would you influence that?
You can't. The intuition influences the other things.
What do you think drives our intuition? Like, where does that come from? If not from our values, it seems like the intuition is tied to that value system, like very closely linked.
That's a really good question. I feel like our intuition could come from different sources, and depending on how you believe. Like, I think my intuition comes part from maybe Holy Spirit or God or universe moving within me. I think your Holy Spirit is culturally relevant. Like, your intuition is like those gut feelings, right? So it's hard to know, are you born with them? Are they developed? Are they natural? Are they, nurtured?
I think women are more in touch with that than men generally. Do you find that?
Why do you think that?
Because in my interactions with women, we'll have somebody come into our office and repeatedly, and all of the women get a creepy vibe. And I don't get that creepy. I'm like, oh, you seem like he seemed like a nice guy. They're like, oh, that guy, that guy's a creep.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I didn't get that. I don't know if it's intuition or if women tend to be sort of their radars up or their antennas are up, their defenses are up.
A woman needs to care more than the average man about being safe in those environments.
Yeah. And maybe that's it. And so I don't know if this is the same thing as intuition.
Yeah, it's a part of intuition. It's something.
Something's going on that wasn't going on with me. And I don't know if it's just me or all men.
It is an intuition regarding something.
Regarding safety. So that it may not cross other areas.
Yeah. If we think about two things, one is that men are not encouraged to feel, right? Men are not encouraged to express emotion or feeling. And sometimes intuition looks like that. Like, I feel, just what you're saying, I feel scared. I feel unsafe. And then the other part is that women from birth are in more danger. And so our biggest fear is getting hurt or violated, and a man's biggest fear is getting embarrassed. Right?
Right.
And so those two things combined, like men not being allowed to feel and not having to worry about being unsafe, we just cultivate generations of women who are allowed to feel, and have to be constantly on alert. And so that there you have that, at least that part of safety intuition.
Yeah.
So when people come to you who have specifically been raised in this purity culture, and maybe they find, it's not really similar experience to you, not really working out in the way that I thought it was going to.
Yeah.
I would imagine there's a lot of different ways they could go with that. They could choose to say, oh, well, I'm no longer going to wait till marriage, or I'm going to discourage people from doing that, or I'm just going to change my mindset and I'm going to continue to wait. I guess my point is they could make a decision on how to improve their life with or without necessarily changing the initial decision, which was to wait. What does that look like? Because the impact of that would be very different.
So what I always say is that no other person should be telling you what to do in sex. Like, this is something, not me, not a sexologist, not a pastor, not a parent. Like, nobody really should be telling you what to do, but you should be able to get good information that helps you make your own healthy choices. And so what happens a lot of times, especially for single people that come into the practice, I say that first thing. I'm not here to tell you what to do. Like, a lot of people really want, like, tell me what to do. What does God want me to do? What is the right thing to do? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't tell you what to do, but we can look at your ethic. Like, let's fill out these 3 baskets and see what we need to explore more, or how these things are impacting you, so that you can make a confident decision on your own. And that happens a lot. People will come in like, I'm waiting till marriage, but it feels kind of right now, right?
Yeah.
I want to explore masturbation, or I want to explore things with my partner, but maybe not sex. Like, great. Let's see how that fits into your sexual ethic. And maybe you come out the other side like, yeah, I still want to wait, but I don't want to be beholden to this belief system that says I'm a shitty person if I don't.
Yeah.
The motivation is different now. I'm not motivated because I don't want to go to hell. I'm motivated because this is what I find beautiful about marriage and commitment, and this is why I want to wait. So it's like shifting that, even though the behavior is the same, maybe. It's shifting why they're doing that behavior. So you
focusing
can now
on the positive outcome of that decision versus the negative outcome of choosing to violate that decision.
Exactly. It's just, and so you can feel more comfortable.
It's really getting back to your why. Like, this is, I may make the same decision, but I'm making it not because this entity or this person has told me to do this. I'm doing it because I'm wanting to do it. I'm seeing value. It's doing something.
Totally.
I grew up in the church as well, so I'm familiar with the guilt that a lot of people live with and talk about, whether it's sex or anything else, any other behavior. And it's always been a little bit sad to me to think about how I think that is not what God intended for us to feel in any way. There's a certain framework, live by these rules, live by these guidelines, but I don't know that the focus is so you don't go to hell. That's not what God wanted. God wanted so you can go to heaven, so you can while you live on earth be full of God's glory and recognize the beauty of life. So it's not that I shouldn't lie because there's a consequence to me lying. It's, if I lie, I will not be a trustworthy person. I won't be able to trust myself. I won't be able to be honest with myself, whether I go to hell or not. I'll live in hell here as a liar and known as a liar.
Or heaven here as a connector, right? Like, I think about what you're saying as like disconnect. Like, people maybe call it sin, but I think disconnect. Like, if we like have these value systems and we go outside of them, we feel disconnected from each other, from your higher power, from whomever.
It's interesting to me how different the experience is. Men and women who are raised in the same culture of wait till marriage, and they're both told the same thing, which is you're going to hell if you don't do this. That's a really simplification of the message, but that's the worst way to interpret it, I think. I don't even know that that's always the message, but that's certainly the worst way that you could interpret that message is, oh, I guess they told me if I have sex, I'm going to hell. And men come out of that with shame, but not in the same way. And men come out with negative sexual experiences, but not nearly in the same way. That pain is not there. Have you spoken with a lot of men and how they've come through that, and what do they say?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm always impressed, maybe is not the right word, but impressed maybe is the right word, at the good men that come through my practice. Some people will say, like, men that are so, out of control or compulsive or things like that. And I don't. I have good men that come through the practice and really want to do the right thing. And what happens for them after purity culture a lot of times is they're kind of fed this lie that their sexuality is uncontrollable, that it is this need that has to be, fulfilled by a partner. And there's a lot of shame for men that come out of purity culture around like porn use or masturbation or things like that. And so it is impactful for them. Or like, a lot of my clients will say, like, I feel kind of just bad even when I'm aroused, or I feel like I don't want to overstep my bounds with my partner, so I don't even initiate sex, And so embracing that your sexuality is your sexuality. It's okay to feel aroused. It's okay to want sex. It's okay to want sex more than your partner. That doesn't demonize you like you've kind of been taught that you are growing up in that world. So it is different than how women grow up, but it's still damaging. Definitely damaging.
How do people decide to go work with you when they've come from a culture that told them to not even think about it in the first place?
Yeah. Seems like a big step.
it is a big step for a lot of people, and I'm really tender about that and delicate about that, because even in our first session, when I'm asking like, how is sex right now? Talk to me about sex right now. And like, a lot of people can't say the words, like, when we make love, when we are intimate, no, talk to me about your penis. Talk to me about your clitoris. What's going on, So a lot of my job is helping people feel comfortable. And once they do feel comfortable, then it's like a really safe space. And we've created a really, really safe space. But people come to me when they're at the end of the ropes. They don't know what else to do. Like, sex is not working out. One partner wants more sex. One partner doesn't want sex at all. Or there's other things going on. And, there's not a lot of providers out there who work specifically with sexual issues. You have your OB-GYNs and you have your therapist, but like, I feel this gap right in between an OB-GYN and a therapist where, sex just isn't good. There's a big difference between sex not hurting and sex being pleasurable, and there's a lot of people that live in that in between. Like, sex doesn't hurt, but it's also not pleasurable. A lot of vulva owners or women live in that in-between space. And so a lot of OB-GYNs don't even ask. Like, OB-GYNs will ask you, is sex painful? But most OB-GYNs, in fact, only about 13% of OB-GYNs will ask, is sex pleasurable? Like, are you having fun? Like, you should be having fun. It should feel good at some level. And there's just a whole lot of people who live in this middle space. And that's kind of where I come in.
We get a lot of people who have been raised where they didn't talk about money growing up. They didn't know what their, what the wage earner in the household earned. They didn't know how much money they had in the bank. They didn't know anything about the financial instruments. They just weren't taught. Mm-hmm. They didn't have those conversations. And so when they come to us, they are coming from that place. They're coming from a purity culture, financially, where they just flat didn't talk about that stuff, and so it's not the same.
No, I totally agree.
But it's getting people to have those conversations, to open up, and we start with that framework to say, well, what do you want your money to do for you? Mm-hmm. The same question
totally
you're
the
asking.
Same. Like, what do you want to be feeling?
Right.
Like, and then how do we use your money to serve you in that way? What are the behaviors we do with the money to help you feel what you want to feel? It's totally the same. I think there's so many similarities between sex and money and food.
There is. Well, there are, and so we don't, just like you wouldn't start a discussion with somebody with, here are blowjob techniques.
Correct.
You're starting with, what do you want sex to provide you? And, so I started the same thing, what do you want your money to provide
I
to you?
love it.
And it's the same type of thing. We see it with a lot of older clients where they just, the man traditionally made money, dealt with the money, spent the money. And so we'll have widows come in who don't know where the money is. They don't know how the bills were paid. They don't understand this stuff. And it's intimidating.
Yeah. That is
it's interesting on the other side of that too, is now that you see more female breadwinners in the household, there's a dynamic with men, I think, when we don't talk about money, where I don't see it explicitly, but I see it in the way that these men will sometimes try to overcompensate their lack of control in the relationship with respect to money. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, all that money is in her IRA, and we're here talking about, the money that she's earning and the benefits of her job. And so they'll come in and like way strong arm it in these weird ways. Do you ever
have conversations where you're talking with a couple and you'll explain a concept,
and he'll turn to her
and explain the concept that you just explained?
Yeah,
what he means, honey.
Yeah, this is what he's saying. Yeah. Do you understand that?
That's called mansplaining.
I think that's not necessarily unique to money. That's a bigger thing about men. It's a bigger thing about men. Like, I remember growing up, like, you never taught me anything about cars, really. You might have taught me, like,
I know nothing about cars.
Exactly.
I couldn't possibly.
It was all about the cattle.
It was about cows.
Cattle I could teach you.
So maybe you taught me how to pump gas and you taught me how to drive a stick shift, but I don't know how to work on cars, right? So